Dear Republicans, no one is teaching us to fear pregnancy, but maybe, just maybe, you should ask yourselves why we might. Setting aside the fact that it might be because miscarrying women are being forced to contend with sepsis or even die before they can get medical care, what else could it be? Could it be that they're afraid of bringing a child into the world you're currently building? A world where you'll let a starving child go hungry at school, let a 6-year-old access a loaded firearm at home, or let an 18-year-old future school shooter buy 2 AR-15s and more ammo than an army would need in the span of a few days? Could it be that you've rolled back child labor laws, armed teachers, banned books, whitewashed history, sane-washed fascism, encouraged discrimination, and stoked intolerance, all while trying to impose Christianity on children at the same time? Could it be that you are promising to take the Department of Education away, the department which funds the services for special needs and autistic school children in this country? Could it be that you're emboldening the worst in us, that you are rewarding the bullies who mock people for their differences and their disabilities, that you're rewarding child sex traffickers and rapists with the highest offices we have? Could it be that you're not promising to help parents manage the devastatingly expensive reality of childcare costs? Even worse than that, you simply don't care. Could it be that you're trying to take away their health care, or that you're talking about no longer offering life-saving childhood vaccines? Could it be that you want to reverse every single policy in place designed to combat climate change? Could it be that they don't want you deciding what gender their children are, what words they can say, what sports they can play, who they can love or marry, what history they can learn, books they can read, or medications they can take? What kind of world do you think you are creating in which any person with a single firing synapse in their brain would look around and say, yes, I want to raise my child in that world? The one where the richest of the rich stay rich and don't trickle down their wealth to people like us. The one in which a child can be left to starve and a raped teenager can be forced to become a mother to her rapist baby. The one in which the earth itself will be sucked dry of every last resource. A planet where our water and our food and our air are all poison. The one in which violence, idiocy, and bigotry are rewarded. The one in which human rights are reversed. If people are afraid to get pregnant in this country right now, it isn't because any one of us taught them they should be. If they're afraid, it is because of what you are doing. And what you are promising to do has given them no other choice. And if you're childless, either because you've decided to be, or for any one of the bazillion reasons you cannot control, that's no one else's fucking business. Young Americans are lining up to get sterilized as we speak. They don't want to bring babies into the world Republicans are creating, and frankly, who could blame them? The very idea of starving kids and letting them get polio makes most of us women, much like Ben Shapiro's unlucky wife, bone dry. Turns out Trump's going to make tubal ligations and vasectomies great again. We already knew jerks like Trump and Elon were boner killers, but this is nuts. And given the incel rate of deeply messed up, small in the hands motherfuckers out there trying to impose their unresolved daddy issue bullshit on the rest of us at this moment, it's also worth reminding that if their parents had remained childless, we wouldn't be in this fucking mess to begin with. And on that note, my guest this week is podcaster and YouTube sensation Brian Shapiro, host of Pushing the Limits podcast and the Pushing the Limits radio show. Brian is a joy. I'm so glad to have met him recently, and I cannot wait to interact with him more. He just tells it like it is, and I love that. It's very refreshing. So enjoy this conversation. I know I did. Okay, this is very exciting for me because this is my new friend, guys. He's not new to any of you guys, I'm sure, but he's new to me as a friend. And I hope you don't mind, Brian, that you're my friend now. But it's just, it is what it is.
It's an honor.
Brian Shapiro, host of Pushing the Limits podcast on YouTube, which is a whole wild, wild west world to me. That is like the frontier. It's like the barrier reef. I don't even know how to navigate the wilds of YouTube, but you, sir, are quite the celebrity over there. And you're on my podcast, which makes me feel like this is the greatest crossover mashup since like Marvel and what the other one is, whatever that one's called. Hi, welcome.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be on your podcast. I've been following you on social media for years. I love what you do. So I'm glad we could link up, and I'm honored that we can be friends. That would be great. I appreciate that. And thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh. Full disclosure, as you know, I hadn't yet been exposed to, and I don't mean that in like an inappropriate way, but like introduced to what you were doing out there. And our mutual friend Pete Dominic, who's also an awesome human being, he was like, "Hey, you want to go on my friend Brian's podcast?" And he told me a little bit about you. And then I went on and we talked, and I was like, "Oh my God, I had so much fun. You're amazing. And then Pete kind of filled me in on what you're doing out there." So first of all,
Thank you.
You're amazing. It was super fun, and you're really good at what you do, and you're so good at what you do that you were just on the Don Lemon show. Like what?
Yeah, it's interesting because as I hit up some of these people, they like, oh, I love your content. I've been following you on Twitter, and Don's been liking my stuff, and we became friends a few months back, and I've done his show multiple times, and it's like a coming joke now because every single time I do his show, I seem to have issues with my headphones or my
Ugh.
computers aren't working or it's really strange. It's like the third time in a row. I don't have issues on any other show, just his show. So, but I did his show for about 10 or 15 minutes just now, and we were talking about Matt Gaetz and Pete Hegseth and those two scumbags. So,
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about that actually. So
sure.
we could just jump right in, but also congratulations on always being on Don Lemon show. That is no small feat,
Oh,
sir.
thank you.
Yeah, it's very, very cool.
Thank you.
But let's look at, well, this is my sad commentary on the state of affairs in this country right now because I'm like, yes, woohoo, the rapist, felon, business
Ah,
fraud traitor that's going to
yeah.
be our president for the second time can't appoint the child
Uh,
sex trafficking drug addict who hates democracy to be the attorney general.
yeah.
Woohoo! Like, Republicans drew the red line probably because Matt Gaetz is such a big dickhead that nobody likes him unless that he was child sex trafficking. But here we are. But
Yeah.
he's withdrawn or pulled out. Matt Gaetz actually pulled out of something, folks. He pulled out. I've been telling that joke all day. I've been writing that thing like
That's funny.
Matt Gaetz has been writing his Venmo account. But for real, like he's not going to be our attorney general. Doesn't mean the person who's
Yeah.
going to replace him isn't going to be more awful, but
Right.
at least he's out of Congress
Yeah.
and he's not going to be the attorney general because I think he went
Mhm.
around the Senate yesterday and was like trying to get support, and they were probably all like, nope, 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 nope. They're not going to say it publicly, but behind closed doors, like you're a douchebag. So what do you think? What's
Yeah.
your take on? Then we'll get to Hegseth and
Well,
RFK too.
yeah. Well, first of all, if Matt Gaetz was a Democrat, every Republican would want to see this report. Let's just be very clear on that.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, Matt Gaetz is an absolute scumbag. Even though it's interesting, the Republicans out there that were talking all this smack about him not even that long ago,
No.
all of a sudden Donald Trump picks him as a possible AG, and they say, "Oh, well, we respect Donald Trump's decisions." They're such cowards, so many of these people. They're so pathetic. And now we're learning more about Matt Gaetz and the Venmo payments. And listen, this report needs to come out. It has to come out because I've heard that Marco Rubio, he wants to take Rubio's seat. That's what I've heard. Anyway, he has his eye on that. I mean, he's just a despicable and a disgusting human being. But the two go hand in hand with Donald Trump. I think Matt Gaetz and Donald Trump have a lot in common. The way they treat women, what they do, the way they gloat about their sexual escapades or lack thereof, whatever they do, they seem to go hand in hand. And Donald Trump just wanted a yes man behind him, wanted someone that'll do everything that Donald Trump asks him to do. I think Pete Hegseth is next. I know we'll get to that, but this was inevitable. This was not a surprise to me. I didn't think Matt Gaetz would ever, get to that position. But just the fact that Donald Trump even picked this guy speaks volumes, and we already know who Donald Trump is. And just why he would even do this to begin with is so outrageous.
Yeah, you're so right. And I wrote, people have said long said, elect a clown, expect a circus. And I was like, elect a sexual abuser, expect rapists. Like it's just kind of like Donald Trump, partly because they're yes men, but also partly because surrounding himself with people who are even more deplorable than him in some cases normalizes his own deplority. How do you say that? Depravity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the bad deeds that are
Hmm.
associated with him. But that's part of it too. It's like if I'm surrounded by rapists and pedophiles and sexual abusers and babysitter rapists, etc., like then I'm not the big shining like this is a bad thing. There's that. There's the yes men component to it. There's
Yeah.
also the normalization of it, where they continue to move the chains, and I've long written about like what they're telling us they're okay with. They've told us they're okay with bigotry, they're okay with xenophobia, they're okay with racism, sexism, they're okay with sexual abuse, they're okay with business fraud, and now they are really saying they're okay with rape. They are saying they're okay with sexual assault. They've long since said that with the Access Hollywood tape. This is taking it to another level. And
Yeah.
and
No,
Pete,
it is. Yeah.
yeah, Pete Hegseth, exactly. And we're learning more about Pete Hegseth now, too. They think they have a mandate. I want to stop on that for 1 second, too, because that bullshit about the mandate is not fundamentally not true. They don't.
I talked about that today. In fact, I
Yeah.
had a guy named Will Chamberlain, who is a staunch right winger who has a large social media platform, but he claims he's an independent. He's not. He did my show today, and he called it a mandate, and I had to stop him right there. It's such bullshit. Can I say bullshit on your
You
podcast?
can say whatever the fuck you want.
Good, good. I'm
Yeah.
so not used to swearing on the radio. It's
I
nice
know,
to do it here. But it's they're so full of shit. I mean, first of all, Trump won the popular vote by like 1.7%. This
Mhm.
election was based on over 200, about 200,000 votes in some of the swing states. This was a very close election. I think it was one of the most closest elections since like JFK,
Yeah.
they're saying. So this is not a mandate. Half the country still hates Donald Trump. And as far as I'm concerned, at least 30 to 40% of those that voted for Donald Trump, in my opinion, are very ill-informed people who are voting against their own interest. And then there's the 10 to 15% of Trump supporters that know he's a liable rapist, 34 count felon piece of garbage, but they don't care because they're staunch Republicans and they don't care what's best for the country. So the fact that anyone would say that this is a mandate, were they saying that the Joe Biden election win in 2020 was a mandate? Obama, when he defeated Mitt Romney and John McCain, was that a mandate? All of a sudden now it's a mandate because they're celebrating that they finally won the popular vote for the first time in 20 years.
Yeah.
They're celebrating the fact that they maybe got 20% of the black vote. Is that something to celebrate about? That out of 10 black people, 2 out of 10 vote for you? And that's something to celebrate. There's a reason why 8 out of 10 black people didn't vote for Donald Trump, because he's a racist, misogynist pig. That's why.
1,000% that too. And he didn't even manage to get 50%, which is ironic to me because he never reached 50% approval rating in his entire administration. And he's still at 50%. So the country does. I mean, it's really split, and that's still remarkable to me that we could even be split. But the disinformation and ill-informed component, I'm seeing people all over social media, particularly on TikTok, going, "Wait, the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare are the same thing." I thought I was covered because I had Obamacare, and so trying to repeal something called the ACA. Oh, really, dipshit? You fucking thing.
Some of these people are just so ignorant. Oh, I didn't know I was voting against that. Geez, Obamacare saved my wife's life. She has cancer. Well, maybe you should have done a little bit of research, you dope. I mean, all these Republicans out there that say, I did my own research. What does that mean? You went on Newsmax? What did you listen to, Charlie Kirk? How do you do your own research? I mean, listen, when people say they did their own research, what it really means is I'm brainwashed and I'm an idiot. I mean, that's what I think it means.
1,000%. I mean, that's how you got all those COVID vaccine, conspiracy theorists, dying, doing what they loved best, like owning the libs by doing their own research online. It's like, oh, good job. Congrats.
Yeah.
What is a tariff and who pays it? Can I change my vote? Sorry.
Don't even get me started with that kook. Speaking of COVID, I know we're going to talk about it, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but I mean, it's such a joke. He did my show a few months ago, and The View played a little bit of my interview, and actually CNN played a little bit of it the other day because I was the first person to interview him about the brainworm thing, and he talked about it with me. The brainworm thing doesn't really mean much to me. What matters more to me is the way he's lived his life. Saying that the vaccine targeted certain ethnicities, which is batshit crazy. Besides beheading whales and staging bear murders in Central Park, his own ex-wife committing suicide after reading his diary of the adultery. And he's just not a good guy. I mean, I had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday who I respect, who said, God, I really like that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I said, huh? What do you like about him? You like the fact that he drove his ex-wife into suicide? Do you enjoy the fact that he lies about COVID and the vaccines, or that all he wanted was a job? The stuff he said about Donald Trump in the past, I think he's okay now because he's going to give me a job. Just no better than a J.D. Vance.
Yeah. Oh, 1,000%. And also, unlike J.D. Vance, at least to our knowledge, also accused of rape and I believe apologized to his babysitter for doing something inappropriate, which is insane. But the other thing is, like you said about, he called Trump Hitler. Like, how can you formulate an opinion on someone so extreme that you can compare them to Adolf Hitler and then turn around a few weeks later and be like, yeah, you know what? I was wrong.
J.D. Vance has been asked about this time and time again, and his response is always, well, you know what? I admitted I was wrong, and he was a really good president. Is there anybody out there that would have no problem working for somebody that they believe is the next American Adolf Hitler? Yeah, I just think that it's horrible that we have people in Donald Trump's cabinet, including his vice president, that you're right, would compare somebody to a man who killed 7 million Jews and like 11, 12 million people. And yet that person would be willing to work for him. And the only reason why they would do that is because all they care about is being in power. All they care about is themselves. They don't care about others. But no reasonable, decent human being that I know would work for somebody that they once compared to Adolf Hitler and then say, well, you know what? Geez, maybe I was wrong about that guy because, he wasn't a bad president. He was a pretty good president. I mean, it's so ridiculous.
And it inherently forces the person hearing it to question their judgment. Like, well, okay, if you were so bad at judging people that you called someone Hitler and then realized you were wrong, like what kind of judgment could you possibly have about anything that is sound? Like I don't think I've ever in my life known someone that I was like, you know what, he's just like Hitler, and then been palling around with them a few weeks later. I don't think I've ever called anyone other than Donald Trump just like Hitler, to be honest. But like, I don't know him, and if I did know him, we certainly wouldn't be friends, and I certainly wouldn't be working for him. He'd probably be down on the ground groveling in a fetal position because I would have just kicked him in the whatever's left of his nuts. But I digress. But no, I mean, and RFK Jr.'s entire family, his entire family. This, please, no, not him, bad guy, not him, not the right guy. This is not the guy for this. Please put someone else in this position. I mean, I joke, but because he couldn't sustain a brainworm, this is the person who's tasked with keeping our entire country healthy now. Like the brainworm was like, I'm peacing out. There's nothing in it for me here. I'm taking my own life. But like now, the things that he's said in the past that we can't just dismiss whole hog, about women who had difficulties conceiving just sitting in the sunlight for 2 hours, or, all of his nonsense, like you said, on vaccines, which some of it is flatly racist and obviously really ill-informed, stupid. And it's the idea that he'll be in a position where he could theoretically reverse mandates on vaccines like polio, vaccines that have been mandated in every state in this country for entry into elementary schools, that no one has been like, they're killing us with these vaccines because we eradicated polio, etc. That he could be in a position where in 2025, 26, we could be looking at the return of completely preventable diseases through vaccines, like polio, like like rubella. And I didn't even know what rubella was, but these are things that could come back if you have public schools at all. But like, it's terrifying.
It is. 3 or 4 years ago, when I got COVID, I was in the ICU for 2 weeks and I almost died.
Oh my God.
And while this was going on, we heard the medical misinformation coming from the far right, the morons out there that are all of a sudden they're transgender experts.
Yeah.
They're, they're medical experts. They're infectious disease experts all of a sudden. And it's something that I'm very sensitive to. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is an imbecile when he talks about vaccines. He thinks it, causes polio and all these other diseases. We know that all this has been debunked. He's not a serious person. He's not a good person. And the fact that he would be put in a position like this only because he endorsed Donald Trump. Make no mistake about it. Donald Trump did not choose Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because he thinks he'll be good for the country. He chose Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because they had a quid pro quo. It was basically, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And that's exactly why Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is in this position. And I'm very disappointed in his wife, too, because I like his wife, Cheryl. I don't blame her for everything. But how the hell can Cheryl Hines not only stand by her husband, but stand by him at Mar-a-Lago, knowing who Donald Trump is? And by the way, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. knows who Donald Trump is, too. They're two phony individuals. And it's a really sad situation we're in. This is not going to end well for the country, and it's not going to end well for all the people in Donald Trump's administration, just like in 2016 when he picked all these people back then. It's not going to end well for them. I give Elon Musk 6 months before they have a major disagreement. We've heard rumblings already that Elon's gotten into it with a couple of Donald Trump staffers already. Oh, yeah. So I mean, these are not serious people. We didn't even get into Tulsi Gabbard, who I believe is a Russian, call her what you want, spy, whatever the case may be. She's someone who has defended Assad, doesn't think that Assad is a threat to this country. She sided with Russia. Do you remember, JoJo, when after 9/11, there were sadly terrorists around the world that were celebrating?
Oh, yeah.
Why is it that Russia was celebrating when he picked Tulsi Gabbard? I felt the same feeling. There are not all people in Russia, but those that work in the government, they were celebrating the fact that Tulsi Gabbard was handpicked because she is a Vladimir Putin apologist.
Mm-hmm.
And she sides with Russia. She does not want Ukraine to win this war, just like Donald Trump, who wouldn't answer that same direct question on a presidential debate. So, yeah, I think we're in trouble. These are not serious people, and they're all unqualified, clearly.
It's almost as if I constantly think about this, and I don't think that I don't think it's hyperbolic to say this. It's almost as if the people he's appointing in these positions are the kind of people those agencies were sort of designed to protect to protect the country from, that they have this sort of oversight to keep an eye on our intelligence community to make sure that we're not sharing intelligence with our nemesis like Russia, which when you install a Russian puppet in that position, it's hard to make that argument that that person is preventing that from happening. But also, as in terms of RFK Jr. and in terms of Matt Gaetz for a while there, but I'm sure he'll find somebody equally as awful. But to me, getting back to all of this related to Russia, as Nancy Pelosi once so wisely said back in the other term, when she was standing at that table across from Donald Trump and Mark Milley and a whole bunch of other people, and she said all roads lead to Putin. And I don't think that that's inaccurate in many ways when it comes to Donald Trump. And Putin would love nothing more than to dismantle this country and our institutions from within. He tried in
Right.
2016. There were a bunch of grown-ups in the room who were like, no, you can't do A, B, C, D, E. You cannot shut down the VA. Like, you can't shoot protesters in the leg. You can't shoot people just for trying to climb a fence. Like, you can't do these things. But now, and he failed in 2020 thanks to us. But now he is not only back in office, the grown-ups are gone, and he has all the branches and the Supreme Court. And to go circle back real fast, actually, let me ask you this: am I crazy? Should it give me the teeniest, tiniest little bit of glimmer of sliver of a hope, adjacent feeling that some Republicans, as long as they don't have to be public about it, can actually stand up to Trump's agenda, like they did with Finger Bowl, Florida Mort, and Scott, by putting Thune in instead of him, and then today by
Right.
rejecting Gaetz? Do you think that they're saying, without public votes, because that's different, because that scares the shit out of them, at least
Mhm.
privately behind closed doors, no, we're not going to give you your wish list? Does it give you any of that, or am I absolutely out of my mind?
I don't think you're out of your mind. I don't have a lot of hope. Here's why I say that. Because if you go against Donald Trump and you don't kiss the ring of Cheeto Jesus, you're probably going to be out of the Republican Party and outed. You're going to end up like a Liz Cheney. You're going to end up like an Adam Kinzinger. Look at Mitt Romney now. I mean, so these are people that I have respect for because at least they're on the right side of history. I don't always agree with them, but I respect them.
Agreed.
So no, the answer is no. I don't think you're crazy. I don't have a lot of hope. Could we find one or two maybe that might be retiring anyway and say, hey, you know what? I don't give a shit. I'm going to be leaving office anyway, so I'm not going to stand by this man. Sure, we might have a few of those, but the overwhelming majority of Republicans are going to side with Donald Trump no matter who he picks, no matter what decisions he decides to make. The guy could literally say the N-word in a press conference, and I still believe most Republicans wouldn't disavow, so.
No, I agree. And I kept saying, I thought I was actually not as certain that Matt Gaetz wouldn't get through, because it seemed like a lot of senators were accommodating what was accused of, what they all knew, what they all already know. They've all known this about Matt Gaetz forever. And by the way, Marge Green being like, if they expose my friend for being a pedophile like he is, then I'll expose all the people I know are pedophiles and are getting away with it. Like, it's kind of like, wait, that's your threat? Like, you're telling us you're just letting all these like sexual abusers walk around Congress, and you know that they're bad guys, and you're just like, but I'll blow the whistle on them if you blow the whistle on my friend who's a sexual abuser. It's like the insane. But I was seeing like the Lindsey Grahams, who's such a bitch, but whatever. Other people kind of like, well, he has a mandate. It's Donald Trump's.
Yeah.
Donald Trump gets to pick the cabinet that he wants, and I was like, oh, where are they going? But notice what happened with Gaetz happened behind closed doors yesterday. What happened with Thune happened behind closed doors. So their bravery, their cowardness really is exemplified when they have to be under the microscope of him being able to signal them out directly and say to the cult, like, look, this is Judas. Let's, get him out. But when they can do it more covertly, maybe they're also realizing that they don't want to, cut their own power off. They don't want to castrate themselves. And like, this is their final shot to not. So I don't know. It's fucked up that like we're not even that this is a win. This is a win for us that we don't have a very likely child sex trafficker going to the top of our justice system. But
It is a win, but it's also sad that this was even somebody that Donald Trump wanted to be there. That's
yeah,
what's really pathetic about this whole thing. And I don't think this will be the end of Matt Gaetz. I actually think he's probably going to use this to his advantage and try to get votes. Look at what the Democrats did to me. Look at what they did to me. I should be the attorney general, and then he'll probably take Marco Rubio's seat, or maybe be the next governor of Florida. I mean, who knows what his aspirations are? But I've heard that.
I've heard
So
that
we
too.
haven't heard the last of Matt Gaetz. I want this report to be public, and I also want to know why he wasn't prosecuted, why he wasn't criminally charged. The same thing with Pete Hegseth. When I think a lot of the alleged victims, at least what she said in this police report, seemed to be pretty valid to me. Why are these people not prosecuted? You know, when minorities use the term white privilege, this is exactly what they're talking about. You know, Matt Gaetz is a guy who got how many DUIs? How many times was he pulled over? Look at who his father was. His father
Exactly.
was a very prominent politician. How many times did he get a slap on the wrist or get nothing on his record? Same thing here.
Hmm.
Listen, I believe this 17-year-old. I believe what her attorney is saying. Why? Because look at the people he surrounded himself with, the tax man who's now in jail.
Yeah.
Look at what even Mark McMullen, I believe, is that his name?
Yeah.
Who
Mark
said
Wayne. Yeah.
Mark Wayne. Yeah, I'm pronouncing his name wrong.
Oh, you're right.
But
Mark
you
Wayne
know,
Mullen or McMullen or
Mark
something like
Wayne
that.
Mullen, yeah, who
Yeah.
said that he personally showed him pictures of women that he had sex with on the House floor.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden, when Donald Trump tries to appoint him to the AG, he changes his tune. I mean, these Republicans have no backbone. They have no moral compass. And they're all yes men to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the Republican Party. Many of
Hmm.
them are afraid of Donald Trump. They're afraid to stand up to him because the Republican Party has turned into a party where if you don't side with everything that Donald Trump does, they will go after you and you will be out of the party.
Yeah.
That's where it is.
Yeah. You'll be exiled and talk about failing upward. You know, white guys failing upward. A convicted felon, adjudicated rapist, business fraud, libelee, failed
Mhm.
upward into the office he was indicted for trying to steal via violence and coup. Now he's back in office for a million trillion reasons, none of which, if you ask me, are grounded in reality at all. And trying to dissect some of the things like that people perceived about him, especially via social media, which is increasingly a powerful tool for good and evil, as you know, right? Like it's a very, very powerful tool. We actually saw that it was much more influential than anyone in establishment media would have ever given us credit for. But people were under impressions that were flatly just baseless bullshit. And my 15-year-old son is he consumes social media. He's like, I know who Trump is, mom, but I'm telling you, my friends are looking at those TikToks going, yeah, he's a pretty cool guy. You know, he seems pretty tough. He's hanging out with UFC fighters. He's on my favorite podcast. Like he's on Joe Rogan. Like he's pretty cool. And I don't know. I don't know anything about the Kamala. And I just like he's cool. He's my type of guy.
Yeah.
And that's they're getting that, but they're also getting all the dis and misinformation about, lies about Trump not being responsible for overturning Roe and like, all of the stuff that you said they'll be voting
Yeah.
against their own best interests. They just aren't understanding it and hearing it. They're getting
And,
complete mismessaging.
and Jojo, I'm sorry, this was your son, you
Yeah, my
just said?
15-year-old son. He said, I get
Okay,
why
so
people my age would see that.
I have some criticism for Democrats when it comes to that. I don't blame Democrats for everything that your son said, but I do believe that they were too careful with Kamala Harris. She should have done more podcasts. I think she should have
Mhm.
done more younger, more hip podcast. The Breakfast Club is great, but she needed to do more of that. And my frustration, and I've talked to some people in the Kamala Harris campaign about this. Just in my town in Las Vegas alone, I'm the only show that's not a conservative political talk show. But
Mm.
Donald Trump did every one of the shows here. And if you kissed Donald Trump's ass enough, he would give you 10 or 15 minutes and he would do your show. Now, I'm not in the business of kissing anybody's ass, but obviously very anti-Donald Trump. And, I couldn't get Kamala for 10 minutes. I mean, I pretty much could get anybody else. I mean, I got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I had about 8 Trump surrogates that did my show. I have very staunch Republicans that do my show. But Harris couldn't pick up the phone when she was in town and do my show for 10 minutes. I don't blame Kamala Harris. I blame her campaign. She did a good job. I thought she overperformed in the short period of time she had. But
Mm.
to reach out, even though your son can't vote yet, to reach out to younger voters you need to branch out a little bit. And she should have done the Joe Rogan show. Listen, I don't like Joe Rogan. I think he's a meathead,
Hmm.
but she should have done his show. Would that have changed the outcome of the election? I don't know. But
Right.
I think she made some similar mistakes that Hillary Clinton made. And I think there's a lot of reasons why Donald Trump won. That's just one of them.
Yeah.
With that being said, you and I are very disappointed. I can't believe he won the popular vote.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of misinformed people out there. But I think she should have done more interviews. She should have done them sooner. And she was, put on a much more scrutiny, and she had to be perfect, and that's unfair. But I thought her campaign they were way too careful with her. And that's where my criticism goes for the Democrats. I just thought they were her campaign. They were just way too careful, and
Mhm.
they needed to reach out to more younger people. And it's one thing to hold a bunch of rallies. That's great, but you gotta go on the opposition a little bit more too.
And you have to be where they are. You have to be where they are.
Right.
And even though my son is 15, and like you said, he's not a voter yet, he will be a voter, and raising good citizens and aware citizens and informed citizens that are young and will be coming into, voting in a few short years is also crucial, because what we've seen with that demographic, and we saw it in this election, is that they've increasingly moved away from the Democratic Party. Even though when you poll them and you ask them what their opinions are on single issues, you're like, dude, you're a fucking Democrat. But it's like, but they think when you put it all together and you lump it all together and then you attach it to a candidate, they're like, oh yeah, that's me. I'm one of those guys. And it's
Mhm.
like, but you're not actually. It's weird. You think that, but that's what they're telling you. But if you really isolate the issues, and we saw that on all the ballot initiatives too, where Republicans across the board were like, when you put it alone, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to vote for that. But when you put it next to Kamala or Donald Trump, I'm going to make a choice that is completely antithetical to what I think I'm voting for. But raising good voters, raising smart voters, being where they are, messaging. And I told you this when I was on your show, and I really do believe you're 1,000% right about them getting out there and engaging more where people are. Is it what we also see on the other side is that Donald Trump has no daylight in between him and a Charlie Kirk, like so much so that Charlie Kirk is telling the world that he's responsible for his cabinet picks. And Charlie Kirk is
Right.
a college, like a community college dropout. No offense to anybody who doesn't have a college degree, but like he another failed upwards fool who just was
He's
in
a
a
white supremacist. He's a white supremacist sympathizer.
right.
He refused to do my show. He doesn't want to be challenged. His entire life is about spreading right-wing propaganda and bigotry and hatred so he can get a following and make money with his stupid Turning Point USA.
Yep.
He's the guy who walks on an airplane that says if he sees a black pilot, he's going to be concerned. He's Tucker Carlson Jr. is what
Yeah.
he is. These are white supremacist sympathizers that don't know what it's like to be attacked because of the color of your skin. They don't know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck and to struggle. They don't know what it's like in any of these facets, and they're just in their own world. Again, that's what X has turned into. It's turned
Yeah.
into Charlie Kirks of the world spreading right-wing propaganda and hatred and bigotry. And he's just not a good guy. I don't think he's very intelligent, but
No.
he's made a nice living for himself by spreading bigotry and hatred like a Laura Ingraham or a Sean Hannity or what Rush Limbaugh did his entire career, quite frankly. And unfortunately, some people in this country like that, the same people that voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, Charlie Kirk's special sauce, so to speak. That's a gross image. But like, sorry, apologies, America. But to his Charlie Kirk's lane, what Charlie Kirk was able to figure out, not being smart, was well, what would resonate with me? Like, I'm a completely unextraordinary, unexceptional, very below average, unintelligent, unattractive goofball who can't get organically laid to save my life, I'm alone a lot, and I don't have a lot of peers because I'm not cool. I'm lame. And well, what would I want if I were out there in the world coming into college right now? I would want people like me to go, hey, I see you, loser. I know you can't get laid. Guess what? That's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's their fault. And it's not your fault that you didn't get that high school, football player. You weren't the quarterback. It's not your fault that you weren't the president of the student council. It's somebody else's fault. It's somebody else that's brown or black or Latino or whatever, and they were coming for your blank, blank, blank. And it just that model, but also that incel component, that like hatred of women and the rejection of women being such this thing that motivates these young men to feeling like they need to be part of something that makes them feel like it's not their fault. That's what Charlie Kirk, if you ask me, I think that with the white Christian nationalism, but this uber masculine, like whatever that kicker's name was, the fucking Harrison Butker,
Oh,
again,
he's a jackass.
yeah, but there's this,
But
there's
Jojo, they don't respect women.
not at all.
They don't.
No,
They don't respect women. They
yeah,
don't respect whether they don't think that women should get equal pay. They
right.
don't think that women, whether you're a trans woman or they certainly don't respect trans people.
That's hilarious.
They don't think women should fight on the battlefield. I had a debate about this on the air today with a conservative. If a woman could pass the same physical test that a man could pass, the same test that you need to be on the battlefield, then why would you have a problem with a woman who is willing to risk her life for the country? There are plenty of women. I'm sure you could kick my ass. There are plenty of women out there that are tougher than I am. And I have no problem in saying that. And the fact that a guy like a Pete Hegseth doesn't want women to serve the country on the battlefield speaks volumes on the way he's lived his life. The habitual cheating,
Yeah,
Charlie Kirk, these are the types that look at Donald Trump. He's the star of this, the person
yeah,
who brags about sexually assaulting a woman, who talks about the body of his daughter,
yeah.
who goes into women's locker rooms. It's interesting. They don't want trans women to be in women's locker rooms, but they don't seem to have a problem with supporting a man who literally goes into a woman's locker room, a bunch of teenagers, when he runs a pageant. I mean,
Yeah.
they're the biggest hypocrites in the world.
Or goes into a dressing room and inserts his fingers inside E. Jean
Right.
Carroll's vagina without her
Right.
permission. They're
But
okay
that's a
with that.
two-tier justice system, and that was a liberal judge, and that was a liberal jury. It's always an excuse with them,
And
unless it's a Democrat.
yeah, and it wasn't a liberal jury in the E. Jean Carroll case,
Right.
by the way. That there was a guy on that jury that said he got his news primarily from Tim fucking Pool. Okay, it
Oh,
was
Jesus
yes,
Christ.
yes, 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 exactly. And
The
this
Putin puppet.
yeah, this attack on women, this sustained emboldening of that component here. That's why when women say this is a war on women, in the midst of us having a right, a fundamental human right, a bodily autonomy stripped from us, one we held for 50 years, when you have that on top of this sort of this hierarchical structure of rewarding rapists, sexual abusers, misogynists, child sex traffickers, when you're rewarding this, that's what you're telling the country. And then you couple that with what Charlie Kirk is building, which is like this, it's women's fault. It's their fault
Yeah.
that you can't
I want to
get a
ask you
job.
about that.
Yeah,
I want
go
to ask
ahead.
you about that because I read one of your tweets and I was sad to hear that you had put out that you were the victim of a sexual assault in your life, which is horrible. I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Thank you.
And you were talking about Nancy Mace, and you said basically exactly what I've been saying on the air about her. As I call her, Nancy Mace, the disgrace. She wants to talk about a horrible situation that happened to her, and my heart, I feel for her, that she was also the victim of a sexual assault. But you support a liable sexual abuser. And I said this on my show, and there's probably a lot of people that are going to disagree with me on this, but I think if you're a woman, or anybody for that matter, and you're the victim of a sexual assault, which is horrible, and you want to preach to us about it, but yet you want to vote for a man who is a liable sexual abuser, who's had 30 women accuse him of sexual assault, including his ex-wife in a deposition.
Mm-hmm.
But Nancy Mace wants to talk about a transgender woman in her bathroom, and she wants to correlate the two. This is something else that fucking pisses me off. They want to make the case that somehow if you get the snip snip, you only get that done so that you can go into a woman's restroom to assault a woman. There's no evidence to support the fact that a trans person has a higher risk of committing a crime in a bathroom than anybody else. But they say, well, it makes me uncomfortable. Well, guess what? Get over yourself. When I go into the restroom, I go in there to do my business and I leave. And I'm not looking around to see, ooh, there better not be a transgender person in here because I don't give a fuck. I go in there, I do my stuff, and I leave. So if Nancy Mace wants to talk about how she has PTSD from sexual abuse, I believe her. But then when you support a sexual abuser, I don't believe her. So, I just don't want people to talk about that when they support sexual abusers themselves. That's my opinion on that.
No, you're 1,000% right. And before the election, when Nancy Mace was on Stephanopoulos, and he
Yeah,
asked her this question, she wasn't able
yeah,
to defend her position. She said, "Oh,
no,
well, that's different. That's a civil case.
yeah.
That's
You're
not
shaming
different."
me. She
Yeah,
said,
and
you're
you're shaming
shaming
me.
me.
And that's the thing. That's the thing, Brian, that she does. That as a survivor myself, I'm like, I don't want to say you're lying, and I don't want to ever say that any woman should be disbelieved, but I will tell you this much. The way she weaponizes and
Yeah.
utilizes what was done to her as a scapegoat, as an excuse, as the reasoning that she can then go out and attack and dehumanize a transgender woman who just wants to come into Congress to do the fucking work of Congress and not fight about which fucking bathroom she can use. Like Nancy Mace has used her victimization as a tool. And to me, as a survivor, I've only ever like talked about it to advocate for more protection and awareness and conversation about how to prevent it. That's not what she does because she at the
Right.
same time, she is like you said, she is endorsing, literally endorsing an adjudicated rapist to be the president of the United States, standing behind him, standing behind Matt Gaetz, who's also been credibly accused of having sex with minors. And part of what I think she was doing with this transphobic thing was trying to take a little bit of the pressure off of the report and off of Matt Gaetz. I think that she was using a trope to kind of look over here. But I also think she's a disgusting, deplorable, horrible person who I call Chester Prynne because if you remember, she wore the Scarlet A
Sure.
and it
Yep.
was right over her big fake. I think they're fake, George Conway, and I can disagree about that all day long, but I think they're fake tits. Sorry, George. I just do. I don't know. I've never felt fake tits, but they look fake to me. But like she's running around there looking like Chester Prynne and then telling people she doesn't believe Eugene Carroll and then using her own
Yeah.
story. And it's just
And you
it's
know what's
fucked up.
worse, JoJo, is that I talked about this today, is that she's tweeted like over 200 times about how proud she is about this trans bathroom thing. And but yet after a school shooting, when we lose a bunch of 8 and 9 year old children at the hands of a madman with an assault weapon, she'll put out usually one tweet. You can go back and look at this. She'll say thoughts and prayers, and that'll be the end of it. And then she'll go on talking about Hunter Biden's laptop or
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah.
So 200 tweets about this issue. And then she says she's the protector of women and she's a champion for women. Oh, really? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're a champion of women, why do you want to tell women what to do with their own bodies? If you're a
Mm-hmm.
champion of women, are you okay with people getting sexually abused, raped, and then having rape babies to be forced to have rape babies? She says she's a protector of women.
Mm-hmm.
It's mind-boggling to me, and unfortunately, some of her base of supporters believe it. It's just absolute nonsense, and she's so proud of herself. You know,
Yeah.
she's so proud about this, but yet when something really bad happens to women, like taking away a woman's right to choose, like I mentioned, or somebody like a Matt Gaetz, who could be our next attorney general, luckily that's not going to happen. She stays mum about that. In fact, even supports a guy like a Matt Gaetz or Donald Trump.
Yeah.
She has zero credibility, and she's a disgraceful human being.
She's a disgraceful human being, and I think I mean honestly, I'm not I am a little bit armchair like diagnosing here, but I think she's just not well. Like I don't think because remember she railed against Donald Trump way back in the day, and then she was like, oh shit, I need to do this now, I need to bend the knee.
Yeah.
But taking it to the point of 200 tweets when you know she's also tweeted about her support for the LGBTQ plus community and doesn't realize what
Right.
the T stands for. It doesn't stand for like transplant. It doesn't stand for T. It stands for transgender, and she's like she's completely duplicitous, but I think that there's something underlying it that's like it's really cognitive dissonance to like a degree that I think she's in not doing well and in denial because like you can't go that far unless you're overcompensating for something or
Yeah.
trying to convince yourself of something, and it's almost rabid. It's like
Yeah.
it's terrifying.
That might be the case. You might be right about that. I tend to lean more on the side of she just has no moral compass.
Well,
All
that's
she cares about is remaining in power. She doesn't care about what Donald Trump says or what he does or his actions. She doesn't care. All she cares about is remaining in power, appeasing her base.
yeah,
I've seen some of her appearances on CNN where she completely embarrasses herself.
yeah,
So you might be right. I think a lot of these people, like even a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Lauren Boebert, they're not mentally well. There's something
no,
really wrong with them. But these are not lawmakers. These are noisemakers.
yeah.
Just like Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz didn't pass one bill when he was in Congress. Gymnasium Jordan, as I call him. He didn't pass one bill.
Yeah.
Don't we want lawmakers? Don't we want serious people that, even if you disagree with them, don't you want them to pass some bills
Mm.
forward? They're like reality TV stars. I mean, it's like it's getting a little bit out of hand now, and it's getting ridiculous.
That's right. Speaking of reality TV stars, one of them got a fucking cabinet position. What is it? I don't remember that stupid one from the Real World Boston. The one who's married to the
Oh
Duffy,
yeah, yeah. He
fucking
makes
John
Fox News.
Duffy.
Yeah, John Duffy, another
He,
unserious person.
yeah, he got some.
Cash Patel's another one who might be leading the FBI, I heard. I hit up Cash Patel because I did meet him a few years ago, and I text him once in a while, and I texted him and I said, would you like to come on my show and talk right before the election? He wanted to charge me $3,000 to make an appearance on my show. So I texted him. I said, "Who the fuck do you think you are?" I said, "I don't need you on my show. I get plenty of people that are far more popular than you, but unfortunately, he might be leading the FBI."
Well, let's. Yeah, that's terrifying. And Linda McMahon at Education, it's like again somebody who's there to dismantle the agency from.
Shocker, right? All the money that she donated to the Trump campaign,
Yeah.
the Trump PAC, and
Yep.
somebody, who is again a very unserious person. Wonderful family, by the way. Another person, her husband, who has been accused of sexual misconduct, and a woman who was the co-founder of a fake, wrestling federation, is again put in a very serious. I think she majored in France and some. I don't even know what
Yeah.
her educational background is, but again, another terrible hire and an unserious hire from
And
Donald Trump.
she was named alongside her husband in one of those suits related to the Ring Boy scandal, where it was
Right.
the allegation is that she was also aware of what was happening to these young men and looking the other way, which is disgusting. But if you can, I know that after what we just talked about, it's hard to pivot to this, but like what I try to do a little bit every day is give myself something that will empower me and fill my
Mhm.
cup and keep me going. So what does that for you?
Besides talking to you, let's see.
Oh,
Let's see what else.
that helps.
It's pleasant. But besides talking to you, this weekend is a perfect example of. I'll give you the example of what I'm going to be doing this weekend. One of my favorite bands growing up is a band called Filter. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I've heard the name.
Hey man, nice shot. Take a picture. They have a lot of good songs. And the lead singer of that band, his name is Richard Patrick. He's a fan of my show. I became friends with him. He's like one of my musical heroes. And I'm going to go check out his concert in Vegas on Saturday. And then I'm taking him to the Raiders game on Sunday. So anyway, that's just personally what I'm doing this weekend. But I go to sporting events. I love live music. I love going out with friends, getting my mind off things, usually outside of my job. I don't talk politics with people. I just try to keep my mind off of it, even
Yeah,
though everybody wants to ask me, talk
always.
politics with me, but mentally it's probably not. This is, I have people that call into my show every day. I had a woman that called in and cried in my show yesterday, and she asked me for advice. What do I do? And I said, look, man, life is short. You got to do the things that make you happy. Now, that could be anything. It could be taking a walk with your dog to the park, spending time with your family. It's my mom's birthday today. I'm taking her to dinner tonight.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Doing the things in life that make you happy, right?
Yeah.
Now, if it makes people happy by calling Donald Trump a rapist all day, then go ahead and do that. I'll do that on my radio show. I'll do
Yeah.
that with you.
Yeah.
But, there are other things that I would rather focus on in my downtime. And
Mhm.
that's what I tell other people do. Spend time with your family, spend time with your friends. For me, it's music, movies. I love live music and I love going to sporting events. And Vegas I don't know if you've ever been to Vegas,
One
JoJo, but
time.
it's a fun
It's
place.
fun. Yeah.
It's
I was
fun.
like adult Disneyland. I was like, what is this? I was there for 2 nights. There was a food convention. I got to meet Wolfgang Puck at like I
Oh,
was
that's cool.
yeah, and it was over in but I was like, there's a mall inside this casino where I was just at the pool drinking in the water all day. And I was
Caesars,
like,
Caesars.
what is
You're talking about
happening?
Caesar's Palace?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Caesars is beautiful. It's a beautiful property. We have the races in Vegas this weekend. Not NASCAR, Grand Prix. Is that what they call it? So that's kind of crazy because they have this race literally on the Las Vegas Strip. The traffic is crazy. But there's always something cool going on in Vegas, but it doesn't mean you have to live in Vegas to have a great time. Like I said, you got to find the things that make you happy. You being East Coast like me, I love, in your face, honest people like you. I miss that about being on the East Coast. I really do. There's some things on the East Coast I don't miss, like the weather. But
Rainy
I
here
love
all
East
day.
Coast
Yeah.
people. East
Yeah.
Coast people are real.
Yeah.
There's a reason why New York will never vote for a Republican for the presidency. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why the most educated cities and states in the country didn't vote for Donald Trump. If you look that up,
Oh yeah.
there's a reason for that. But yeah, I mean, those are the things. I don't know what the things are that make you happy, but those are the things that I like to do.
I love it.
Um, get my mind off things, you know?
It is this, actually. You said it. It is this for me. It is what I'm increasingly leaning into and writing about more and more. I swear, I read about politics less and about my feelings more, which is very strange. But I think I've wrapped my brain around why. And it's these human connections when everything else in your life seems so beyond the scope of your control and your reach. And it's just,
Mhm.
it feels like it's always getting darker and darker and darker, and you can't stop it. When you have those people in your life that keep you feeling safe and seen and sane and just connecting on that human level where it's not you're not focusing on what's to come, you're focusing on
Right.
what's in the moment, what's happening in the present, and those human connections. I think that's the antidote to everything that we're
Yes.
looking at, but it's also always sort of keeps my little candle lit and
Hmm.
protected so that no one else can blow it out, and leaning into the just conversations and meeting people, meeting good people, having real conversations, getting to know about their lives, and then maintaining those relationships and friendships through whatever is to come. To me, that's the key. And that's kind of where I've really put my focus lately. Obviously, like you, also standing up every day, putting on my eye black and rolling up my sleeves and getting the business of fucking punching them in the nose. But you can't do that all day long if you don't
I just
have,
do that on the air.
what's that?
I mean, I just do that on the air. I don't know if you've heard of some of the MAGA callers that call into my, I mean, it's fun to just torture them, but they keep
Yes,
calling back,
but
which
that's
is
but
interesting.
that's
But
badass. That's so
it's
badass.
so weird. Yeah, it's so weird though. I'll give you a quick 30-second story. I was at a basketball game last night. I was at a UNLV game last night. And my friend who works for Channel 8, great guy, his name is Chris Matthews. He's the sports guy for Channel 8. He asked me, Brian, I kind of like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. What do you think about him? And I said, well, I don't like him. And I wasn't brass about it, but and then a guy in front of us who's sitting with his girlfriend turns around and goes, we didn't come here to talk about politics. Stop talking about politics. And I'm like, man, people are they're so sensitive and
Yeah.
eavesdropping in other people's conversation, man. It's like, we're so divided now as a country, and that's what makes it, really sad.
Yeah.
And I wish that wasn't the case. I mean, I hear people all the time that say, I don't talk to my brother anymore. I don't talk to my sister anymore because they're supporting Donald Trump. And it's just like, it breaks my heart to hear that stuff.
Yeah.
But I do blame Donald Trump for a big portion of that. I believe his rhetoric, he really has divided this country. And I don't
Yeah.
mean to sound gloom here, but I want these 4 years to go by as fast as possible.
If he makes it four, but yeah, but yeah, who knows what's gonna happen. But to your last point, and I maybe I guess my own perspective on this, because at this point, if you're voting for Donald Trump, it's like you can't say you thought he might be better, you thought he might not be as bad, or he's a known entity at this point. You know exactly what
Right.
you're voting for. If you're, but
Hmm.
there are a lot of people who are stupid, but we all know those people in our
Right.
family who voted for more than once, and I have them in my family, and Thanksgiving is always one of those tenuous things we have to navigate. But what I've learned, and I think this is best for my children. People could argue with me all day long. Is we just don't talk about it. We focus on what we have in common and the threads that do connect us in those moments where everyone else is kind of watching and hoping for peace. That for that night, for that day, for that ever much time, I'm willing to put aside our differences in this regard for the greater good. And it's not easy, really, it's not. But once you're there, you can just rest in that space. And like it feels easier when you're actually doing it than to think about it in advance. So that's what I'll be doing
Yeah.
next week.
Well, your platform is extremely important. You have a huge following, and there's a reason for that. You're really good at what you do, and I love your opinions. But you also interject some humor into it, and you make me laugh a lot. And I think we can't take ourselves too seriously, and we need to while we're in some very serious times, and there's a lot of people that are struggling. It's important, I think, sometimes to entertain people and make people laugh a little bit, and I try to do that. I'm the first person to self-deprecate and.
Yeah.
That's important, to interject some humor in what are some crazy times sometimes the
Yeah.
times that we are living in today. You have to be able to do that. I just don't know. I mean, you mentioned you wake up and you put, what'd you say, your eyeliner on? Is that what you said? You sounded like JD Vance.
Eye
Oh,
black, like
eye
you're
black.
going,
Okay.
like you're going to the field, Yeah.
Can you imagine what it's like to wake up in the morning and put on 8 layers of orange makeup, to put on your girdle, to put your hairpiece on, or the 4 hair transplants he had,
Yeah.
and people call him, women, some call him masculine. They think he's masculine. He looks like, all due respect to the clowns at Circus Casino, he looks like a clown.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Is that masculine? Like, I don't understand that.
I will never, as long as I live, understand that. I mean, I've actually gotten into an argument. I'm like, he's literally orange. He is literally orange, and like he is not fit by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not fat shaming the guy. He's not fit. He doesn't drive a car. Like you don't ever see him smiling, really laughing. He
No,
doesn't go
never,
out, right? Like he's
never.
no, and he can't. You don't see him other than golfing, and you don't see him playing sports. I'm not even sure what's going on with that right leg. I've been watching that right leg for
He's been
years.
dragging it. Yeah, he's been
Yes,
dragging that right leg a lot, which is
yes,
weird.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't under. He's a terrible golfer too, by the way. I'll add
yeah. I've
that
heard
in there as
that.
well.
Yeah,
I
I've had.
played college golf. He's a terrible golfer.
Yeah,
But
shocker.
you know, he'll brag about anything. He's the best golfer. I think one time he said he's better looking than Kamala Harris, which
Yes, he did.
I couldn't believe he even went that far. Kamala
Yeah,
Harris is a beautiful, intelligent
beautiful.
woman,
Yeah.
and I couldn't believe that. But I do find it funny that Melania will not really be a first lady. She'll just be a part-time first lady. She
Yeah.
doesn't even want to be in the same state as his. So I think
Right.
that speaks volumes. She says she wants to do it to the statement they put out to take care of her son. Excuse me, I have
Adult
friends
son.
that actually know Barron. Barron is in college, okay? He doesn't need mommy, okay? So that's a lie. She wants to get away from her husband. She doesn't want to be anywhere near him in the contractual marriage they have. But
Right.
anyway, don't
And she
even
doesn't
get
want to
me
live in the
started.
fucking White House. She hated the
Yeah,
White House. It can be a
yeah.
prison. If you don't want to be there, it can be a prison. And she never wanted to be there, and she doesn't want to be there now. And yeah, she's got to go take care of her adult son. That's whatever. Oh my gosh. Okay. So oh my God, this was so fun. You guys have to come back. Pushing
Sure,
Limits
anytime.
podcast on YouTube. When can people check it out? It's on all the time, every day.
So I'm on a live radio station as well in Vegas called KSHP. It's an FM AM radio station, so I kind of use that. Even though I'm live on the radio, I also use it as a podcast studio, you know. So we're live on YouTube, we're live on TikTok, we're live on the YouTube page, which is at PTL Radio Show, where you can subscribe. I'm also on X still at PTL Radio Show. I just signed up to Blue Sky, even though I don't have near the following that you have. You're the amount of followers you have in a short period of time is wild, but that's definitely a testament to you.
Oh,
My website too is pushingthelimits.live, and obviously I would love to get you back on my show too. I love doing this with you. I think it's awesome, and I love getting your perspective, especially a woman's perspective too, on so many important issues. It's one thing if middle-aged men talk about these issues, but I like to hear. That's why I love it. You know, I have so many women that call into the show, which I love. You know, diverse listenership, and I think that's really important. I don't want to, just like I don't want middle-aged men creating policy for women. You know, I don't want men speaking for women on what are really important issues too. So I'm glad you do that.
well, thanks. And what we've seen in the wake of this election is a lot of data revealing what is happening in the social media spaces related to news and related to politics. And it's a lot of white Republican dudes. It's a
Yeah.
lot of white Republican dudes, and they're all friends with each other, and they all empower each other. And women are being
Hmm.
left out of the conversation as they're dismantling our rights and degrading our respect and place in the community. Talking about taking our right to vote. You got fucking Nick Fuentes out there saying it's your body,
Oh,
it's my choice, and that shit. It has to be taken seriously. But that as a woman, as a mother of a girl, but as a woman who was silenced for decades, actually, in a marriage that it was less than ideal. I'll just put it that way at the moment. I understand what it's like to be oppressed by men, what it's like to have men make every decision for you. And as a survivor
yeah.
of rape as well from when I was in high school, I understand what it feels like to have your power stripped from you as a woman. And then to see
Mm.
that the government right now sure looks like it's a renaissance for rapists, and then you have all of these women empowering and emboldening those rapists. It to me, I'm never going to be fucking quiet ever again, Brian. Not for 1 second in my life. Every breath I have left in my body and soul and chest is going to be used to stand up and scream out loud, no more, make this stop, we have to change it. And you are an ally and an incredibly powerful one in that regard. And so what you do and your audience and the way you engage is so incredibly important. And I really look forward to working with you more and having more conversations with you and getting to know more about you and about your audience and about the phone calls that you take and about how those are going to change, because they're going to change when people start living the shit they think is a lie. Like
Yeah.
when we tell them this is coming for you and they say,
Yeah.
bullshit, eggs are going to be cheaper. Okay. Yeah. And the deportations are only going to be the criminals. Okay. And women aren't going to lose any
Yeah.
of their rights. Okay. When all that starts happening and they start calling you like, Brian, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Oh, didn't I know this was going to happen? You're well, we could be better angels and say, I'm not going to say I told you so. But
Right.
those calls are going to change. You're an empathetic human being. I can feel that. I don't know you in person yet, but your vibe is very empathetic and compassionate. And when they call, I think you're going to be like, well, okay, well, let's talk about it. And then what can we
Yeah.
do to make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, that's really nice of you to say. I'd like to think of myself as an empathetic person. And I would, you got to come out here and co-host a show with me in studio one of these days. You got to come out here to Vegas and bring your son and have some
Okay.
fun. And yeah, you got to come out here and co-host a
Twist my
show with me because
arm.
I think my
Twist my arm.
listeners would love it. They would
Oh my
love
gosh.
it.
Do you know,
So
like a little bit of Vegas sun in the midst of all of this would be amazing. Okay, I'm going to
you
hold
should
you to
do
that.
it.
I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to bring both my
Get out
kids.
here.
I'm going to do
I
it.
have some Vegas connections, so I can probably hook you up with a strip hotel room. So,
Oh,
but unlike Matt Gaetz, I won't be asking you to go up to your room. I'm sorry, that was a terrible joke, but I'm not Matt Gaetz.
no,
I'm
he
not
wouldn't
Matt
ask
Gaetz. I'm
me.
not Pete Hegseth. I'm not Donald Trump.
No.
I'd like to think I treat women with respect and
Yeah.
and dignity because you all deserve it. And
Well, thank
I'll
you.
always stand up for women. And of course,
Thank you.
we're on the right side of history, and that's
I
that's
agree.
important. And that's the way I was raised. To treat
Right.
everybody as equals and with respect. And yeah, just like you, if somebody disrespects me, or if somebody, I had somebody call into my show the other day calling me a Nazi, a COVID Nazi,
Yeah.
and so of course I went on full blast with them,
Yeah.
but I treat people the way they treat me, and
Yeah.
that's just my motto. It's the way I'll
Yeah.
always be. That's the East
That's
Coast
the East
mentality,
Coast.
right?
That's the East
Yep.
Coast. I see we said it at the
Yep.
same time. That's the East
That's
Coast.
right.
Like if you don't step up to me, we're gonna be okay. But like my son even said to me, he's like, "How are you?" He goes, "Mom, you're so nice to certain customer service people, and then somebody gives you a hard time, and you're like, what the fuck? Why are you talking to me like that?" I'm like, "That's exactly why, Leo. Because if they come at
Yep.
me like, 'Hi, how are you?' I'm gonna be, 'Hey, how are you?' But if they're like, 'Did you just honk at their end? You're in front of while you're in line for Dunkin' Donuts.' I'm like, 'The car in front of me wasn't fucking moving for 5 minutes.' She's like, 'You honked?' I'm like, 'Are you asking me if I honked?' Like, yeah, that's East
That's
Coast.
funny.
Yeah,
That's
don't piss
funny. Yeah,
us
you got to
off.
be true to who you are. You got to be true to
Yes.
who you are. You can't. I think it's more unhealthy to hold things inside,
Yeah.
and not speak to how you feel and how you think. And unfortunately, that's rare these days.
Yeah. And that's
I've
why
burned
you
bridges.
resonate. That's why people like you
Yeah,
so
I
much
mean,
because
I've
you just keep it
I've
real.
burned bridges with people in the radio business. People will say things, and then I confront them on it.
Yeah.
I don't like to hold things in, and I don't like to hold resentment. I like to address things with people, and some people respect it, and some people don't. But you know what? The people that don't don't need to be my friends, and the people that respect it are usually people that I hang out with that I'm close to.
Exactly, 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 exactly. The same,
Mhm.
same, same. And I don't want to
Yep.
have everybody agreeing with me all the time. And I certainly don't want people to think I should agree with them all the time because that's where we do the most learning and the most growth.
Yep.
Growth is when we don't agree all the time and we can come to a consensus, which is a word that it still exists, but believe it or not.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
Amen.
so much fun. I am so glad to get to know you, to get to meet you, to get to talk to
Yeah.
you.
Same.
I'm totally gonna hold you to that Vegas thing. We want to see the sphere.
Absolutely.
That thing is insane, so cool. And I want to have the bravery to go up into the Eiffel Tower for the first time. I was too scared to climb.
There's a restaurant. There's a French restaurant up there. I'll take you out there.
Okay, I was so scared of
So
heights.
we'll
I'm
do
such
it.
a pussy. All right,
I'm more claustrophobic than scared of heights, but I'm
yeah,
with you. I understand.
I get that, but combine those two and oh lordy, like a little tiny
Yeah,
elevator
that's
going up
true.
really high. Woof. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Sure.
This is awesome. I know we're gonna do this again. Brian
Absolutely.
Shapiro, thank you so much. And this concludes this episode of the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast, because that's how we do it over here on the East Coast. We know that. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. It was so fun and cathartic. And see you guys next week. We're gonna be okay. We're gonna stick together. We're the only way out of this is through. So thank you, Brian. Thanks, everybody.
You bet. Thank you.